It's all about the program. And I got 5 minutes here. I'm timing myself, so let's get to the point. But on page 14, love the whole thing is the big book, right? That's our basic text. It says, "Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid." So what's the price? I mean, sometimes you go in a meeting, put a buck or two in the basket, right? Was it sponsoring a lot of people, going to a lot of meetings, calling up a lot of people? It says here, a price had to be paid. So Bill realized this simple price. In my life, I tried everything. The price I paid was going to try to figure everything out and go into a lot of, I don't know what you'd call it, but I try to analyze my problems. And even our big book has 600 pages. I had shelves full of self-help books. Everything I tried. I talked to a lot of professional people. I spoke to a lot of people, and I sponsored people and had sponsors, whatever it was. But Bill's talking about a price that had to be paid. So what does he say after that? He says, "Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn all things to the Father of light who presides over us all." So I started to realize that my intellect wanted me to figure everything out. If I had more books, if I had more, whatever it was, if I was thinking, I could resolve the problems, right? But what is that? It's amazing. After being in this program, how many years does we have to go to step one? Step one says it all to me. It says we admit we're powerless over alcohol and our lives have become manageable. So as soon as I surrendered, letting go through these steps in this program, having had that spiritual awakening, getting out of the self. The ego was the problem. It says right here of destruction of self-centeredness. And when Bill talks about this, on page 8, he says when he was really in a down part of his alcoholism, and he says here, "No words can tell the loneliness and despair I found in the bitter morass of self-pity." See the word self there? He says self-pity. Quicksand stretched all around me in all directions. I had met my match. I've been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Now, working these steps and working the program, I didn't realize for the first few years I was in that I could be, as Bill on page 8 says here, Bill says, "I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes." So we have the solution here. And again, these 12 steps, it involves all the major religions, I think, in philosophies, Eastern, Western philosophies. We have prayer and meditation. But the amazing thing is, I didn't believe it. When I came in, I saw the steps in front of the room, and it just seemed like it really was there just to dress up the room. And a lot of times it just seemed like that's the general consensus that, we have the steps here, but mainly let's come in here and be in, I guess, what you call the problem, not the solution. It's telling you the solution is simple. It's simple, simple, simple. But we're growing up in a secular scientific society where everything in our lives we try to figure out. Science can solve it. It's interesting. When Dr. Silkworth said back then nobody could solve alcoholism, all the synthetic knowledge of the scientists and the docs at the time could not cure alcoholism. Guess what? We're almost 100 years later, and guess what? Still haven't cured it. The only solution it says throughout this book is a spiritual solution. That's the only thing. From the doc's opinion all the way to we agnostics, every chapter talks about a spiritual answer, spiritual solution. It's that perception change, that being reborn, getting out of the old self, being reborn. 63 talks about that. But it was really a difficult thing for me to grasp because my intellect wanted to figure it out. And the more I try to figure it out, the more I made my problems real. But the solution is here. The solution is letting go. And step 3 talks about being reborn and thinking and feeling God consciousness come in. We can let it go, realizing the old. Look, we were created in God's image. We have a spiritual side, we have a human side. Forget these. It says, these sorry transitory world, and get in the spiritual way of living. It's be rocking the fourth dimension. It's okay with the 5 senses, but we could be rocking into the 6th sense of existence. It's pretty amazing, the whole thing. It's very, very simple, but not really easy for a lot of us who come into these meetings. So it says in the Spiritual Awakening, Step 12 says, we can have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. It's saying directly here, the result of these steps, and especially alcoholics and practice principle in all our affairs. So during the day, I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am for my second. My second thought is to get centered, and get spiritual and have that God consciousness, which is in us. Every man, woman, and child, it says in We Agnostics, it's in there. It's basically there, but we bury it with the ego, the self, defects of character, Step 4 says, mainly based on self-centered fear, but the ego, easing God out. And with that, I think I hadn't said enough, so I'll pass and wait for what everybody else has to say, and thank you. Okay, thank you for listening. The key words in future videos. It's really been a speakers meeting about 12-step recovery. We have a lot of AA speakers, 12-step programs, Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't forget this is AA about alcohol addiction, alcoholism. We read from the big book, the 12 steps. It's all about also drug addicts and drug addiction. So thank you for listening to this AA speaker, Alcoholics Anonymous speaker.